employment or employability training. Thank you so much for joining. We're recording this for the benefit of people who couldn't be here and for anyone who might be interested in this in the future. But this is the first in a series of webinars which we are running about employability training and the opportunities that it can offer us in community radio. So I should introduce myself. I'm Cormac Lawler and I work with a charity called Radio Regen. We're based in Manchester. And I know some of you already, or I've met some of you, and some of you I haven't, and I'm very happy that we have such a healthy interest actually in this this webinar already, and this subject in general. Brian, do you want to introduce?
Yeah, my name's Brian Webb and I work for SHMU FM, which is based up in today sunny Aberdeen. So SHMU stands for Station House Media Unit, and we're on 99.8 FM.
Fantastic, and it's also quite sunny here in Manchester, so yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Good.
Thanks so much to everybody for joining, and it's actually interesting to me that there's quite a few people from Ireland. You can probably tell my accent, but yeah, I have been over in Manchester for about 14 years now. So let's give you an overview of the where we are in terms of this webinar today, and maybe the whole series, because quite a number of you have signed up for the entire series, which is great, and I think it should be a great opportunity to explore what we all do individually, and also to share some of the best practice, I guess, that we have managed to glean over the last few years, and I'll kind of give you a bit more detail about how we've done that through this project that is framing this this webinar series, and also from our our background, from our experience. Brian is massively experienced and will tell you a bit more about what they do in SHMU in due course. So let me just tell you just a bit about where this comes from. This is a 3-year project called Employment FM, and we're just actually almost at the very end of this project. It's been funded by the Paul Hamlyn Foundation, which is a philanthropic organisation in the UK. A very good funder if anyone's interested, and if anyone is interested in follow-up funding for employability work, we'll be very happy to talk about that in a general sense, maybe at the end of this webinar or throughout the series. But this project was specifically around using community radio training to boost employability skills. It actually was funded through their Speaking and Listening Fund, which is now coming to an end. But we this is a follow-on project from something that we did before with Paul Hamlyn Foundation, and also in partnership with SHMU. But this project here, we worked with almost 100 young people from very different backgrounds, and working with different partners. And the whole point of it was to explore different models of how to deliver employability training through different partnerships, through different delivery styles, and with different frameworks, like different qualification systems and so on. And the whole point was to look at how we can work together, how we can put community radio stations together with different organizations. So we worked with a number of schools. I'll break down those, if you're looking at the slide there, I'll break down those acronyms for you, for anyone who's not familiar with school systems here in the UK. Well, SEN is Special Educational Needs, and PRU is the Pupil Referral Units. So those are schools which are set up for basically students who've been excluded from other schools and can't access mainstream schools. And so they are then under the care of these pupil referral units. And I'll say maybe a bit more about those in due course, but we have found them very interesting schools to work with. But I mean, you can maybe get the picture that we were working with we were trying to work with young people who were from probably disadvantaged backgrounds, and you know, looking at community radio as a way of bringing new ways of learning here in, and to just explore the opportunities of that training. So let me just go on and ask that question about, and I am interested in what other people are doing with this, but let me just, you know, frame that question of why employability training. Like, why are we interested in this subject? Like, why are we here today? In some ways, the first thing really is we're offering young people a chance to, you know, improve their life chances, their employability skills. And you can see there a photograph of Brian with a group of his trainees with their qualifications that they've earned as a result of the course that Brian and his colleagues run in Aberdeen. And, you know, this is a tangible piece of evidence that young people can then use to bring to employers and so on, to say, you know, I've achieved something here, and that's a core part of what SHMU do, and I'll let Brian talk about that himself. So the first thing I'm gonna frame this question of why employability, because that's what we're talking about in this webinar today specifically. Like, what is the rationale for doing this kind of work? And the first one really would be the benefit on young people themselves. The second one is the benefit that it has to your station. Now, without being totally mercenary about it, what we're talking about is an opportunity for you to raise your social presence, to prove your social impact through the work that you do and the stories that you can tell about that work. So, you know, we can tell stories about our work in very many ways. We can tell, you know, personal stories, like we can we have a nice video of the young man in the photograph there, Anton, who went through a very significant journey with again with SHMU. You'll probably pick up a common theme here, is that I'm going to big up SHMU's work a lot because it's what they do is great. But it's the ability to tell personal stories of people who have actually transformed their lives, you know, through the work that we've done. But also you can tell those stories through, you know, hard statistics. You know, like 80% of our young people have gone on to employment, which is a pretty significant statement to be able to make. I'm just making that number up, but you know, if you have good stats, you can often get the ears of the funders that you want to attract, or the partners that you want to work with. So so these are ways of telling those stories, but also, you know, this is what we do in community radio, isn't it? I mean, you know, think about why we exist as an organization. We're here to achieve social gain, I guess, in the language of Ofcom. But really, you know, whatever language we use to present that, it's an opportunity for us to show, you know, our value as an organization for the community, for the people that we work with. The third thing is that this is exactly what employers want. The kind of work that we can do in radio-based training is actually what employers want. Now, I have a great piece of audio here that I've actually extracted from an interview that I did with Brian before. So I'd be almost paraphrasing what Brian has said to me, but Brian, if you'll permit me to go on, I'll bring you in a second. But
that's fine.
You know, what employers have actually told us that what they want is young people who are confident, who can communicate, who can plan, who can work as part of a team, who can work together, who can work as part of an organization. And Brian makes the point that the employers can train young people, straight out of school with maybe not as many life skills as they might need in the workplace. Employers can teach a trainee, a young person coming through the system, to carry out the specific tasks that trade maybe requires, like to cut hair, or to change a tire, whatever. But these are the skills here, these soft skills, the confidence, communication skills that often don't often young people don't have these skills. And this is, I'm probably not telling you anything new here. The people that you work with are probably always maybe lacking in confidence, and through the process of working with them, they build an incredible amount of confidence. And that question at the bottom of what does this have to do with radio? Well, basically everything. Everything that you do as part of putting together a radio show is directly translatable to these skills that employers actually want. So as long as we can put that case, as long as we can tell those stories, as long as we have good evaluation in place to be able to show the employers that we have now a group of trainees coming through our program, then that will create opportunities, that will create that demand, from employers, that we are actually giving them what they want. I think Brian has just dropped out for a second, so you'll have to bear with us. Okay, so Brian has just answered the question there. And the fourth one, it's a shame that Brian has gone, because I actually wanted him to speak about this subject. The fourth thing of why employability training is that this is an opportunity for the station, your organization, to sustain itself in terms of its business model, in terms of its revenue generation. Now, I don't know, and I'll be interested to hear how a lot of you are funded, or what kind of work you actually do. Because I'm sure it's so varied. I mean, every single community organization is a unique being. Right. I'm sorry about this. That the usual technical issues. Brian's laptop has just crashed at the critical moment. But this is a real opportunity for us to build a sustainable revenue generation model. I was going to let Brian tell you about the business model, but I'm very happy to share that with you. If I just flick on this slide here, I hope you can read that. What you're looking at here is the payment model that's in use in Scotland by Skills Development Scotland for people who deliver government contracts. So this is kind of like the equivalent of the work program. It's not exactly the same. The funding is different in Scotland to the rest of the UK, and obviously Ireland is a completely different framework for funding. But the general point I would make here, before going into the specifics here, but the general point I would make here is that what you could be looking at, and what SHMU are doing in Aberdeen, is to actually deliver government contracts. So they are actually embedded in the as an employability provider, and actually deliver employability training that is funded by the government. So this what you're looking at here is the actual payment rates that the government pays you for each individual person that comes through your course. So everybody that starts a course with you, you automatically get £850. Everybody that actually goes on to a sustained job, you get £600. Every person that goes on to a modern apprenticeship, you get £1,000. So now, with the proviso that this will not be exactly the same for every station that's here today, you can sort of start seeing that this is now starting to look like a proposition, sustainable business proposition, which is exactly what SHMU have managed to do. It is a shame that Brian is not here to tell you more about this. Hopefully he will be able to join us at least for the Q&A at the end, so you can ask more questions about that. But I've obviously learned quite a lot about it through working with Brian for years now. So I'm happy to answer questions about that. So that's really an overview of why employability, like what the rationale is for this kind of work. But if you're interested in doing this work, and I will be interested in hearing more about what you actually do, I'm sorry, this can't be more collaborative. It's maybe the constraints of this kind of technology for now. But I'll be interested to open this conversation out towards the end. But in terms of what you actually need to do, you may be at various different points along the sort of development journey towards becoming an employability provider like SHMU, or you may not want to do anything like that. You may not want to do government contracts. You may want to keep it quite small and be funded through the local council, funded through grant-giving bodies. There's a whole range of different models, and I'm going to get into that in a second. But what do you actually need to do? And it's that question is obviously dependent on what do you need is dependent on the question of what do you actually want to do. So the kind of the level of sophistication behind delivering government contracts is obviously quite different from doing work maybe with a local school. You may still need those policies and procedures in place, and you probably will do. But obviously the question is dependent on other things. But the first thing really that we wanted to, myself and Brian, when we were thinking about this, that we wanted to impress on you is that it's so important to be lined up as an organization behind this kind of work, that you Brian has actually joined us, so I'll just leave off of what I'm just saying and just add Brian back. Thanks for joining us, Brian. Sorry you had those issues. Hopefully you can hear me as well, and apologies to everybody for a slight crash here. But yeah, it's so important to be fully behind this as an organization, because if you have one, there we are. Hi, Brian.
Sorry.
Okay, it's gremlins. It just it'll be guaranteed to happen. Don't worry. So you just missed the point that I was making about government contracts and SHMU and so on, but hopefully I'll let you answer questions about that, Brian, later on in the session.
Yeah.
I'm just here talking about the what you'd need to do it and what you might want to do. But those bullet points really that are on that slide about the organizational desire, the actual the alignment in your organization is key. And then once you've decided that you actually want to do this, then you need all these other things in place. Like you need the policies and procedures. You need the staff to deliver this work, and you need each staff member that's delivering a particular part of the work to be trained in that part of the work that they're doing. And I think that's a key point to make here, is that I don't know how what their capacity people have, but I think it's a lesson that we've learned certainly through delivering this kind of work, is that it's all very well to have the desire, but you also need to have the capacity to do it. And if you have trainers who are good at doing mixing desk training and so on like that, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be great at delivering training that's focused on employability skills and, you know, working with a particular set of young people with particular challenges, you know. So I think it's really important to make that point that the staff that you have need to be actually at the level that you need them to be at in order to deliver this kind of work properly. And then, of course, the other things, without glossing over them too much, but the course materials and the evaluation tools are key to actually be able to tell those stories and to capture the learning that I've just mentioned before, with the purpose of, well, first of all, figuring out whether it's working, you know, whether you can actually say that your training is of good value, but also to impress that on other funders and partners and so on. And Brian has just made that point, yeah, 15 full-time staff. I mean, SHMU is quite a significant operation if you haven't picked that up already. Not everybody will be at that level. Yeah, well, we'll explore that in more detail maybe as we go on. It would be actually useful, just to say that if people are listening in and picking up on what I'm saying, if there's anything that you're sort of not really quite sure of, or if there's something that you want to share, you feel free to do so in the chat, and we'll be trying to monitor that and come back to these kind of points in the Q&A at the end. So just to make that point. Okay, some people are typing already. This is what you're looking at here is a kind of just an infographic that we made a while back, and it's just, I don't want to go through everything in detail, but it's really designed as a thinking tool, as a tool to get you thinking about what you want to do, like what is the shape of the kind of training that you want to deliver. Once you've decided, like, this could be a good thing for us to do, then you have to think about, like, who do we actually want to work with, like what kind of young people, or, you know, what in fact, it may not be young people. I mean, employability training doesn't need to be focused on young people, but, you know, what kind of training are we thinking of delivering here? Is it accredited? You know, do we need to deliver qualifications? If so, how do we do that? Do we need to work in partnership with a college or a school or some other accrediting organization, or are we going to go through the process ourselves of becoming an accredited center and be able to deliver that ourselves? So all of these kinds of questions need to kind of will help you kind of move in a certain direction, and will affect decisions that you take down the line. Excuse me. So also the question of how is it to be funded, obviously the key question, you know, is this funded through you know, government contracts, like I said, or is it funded through grants, you know, like through the, you know, something like the Paul Hamlin Foundation or something like that? Is it more in a sort of an agreement that you have with the council to deliver on council services? Is it going to be funded through an organization, like maybe you want to set up a partnership with schools and they might be able to have a sort of a discretionary budget that they can pay for this kind of work? So all of these questions they need asking, and I should say that there's no need to stress. Well, I will be sending the slides from this presentation to everybody also, and I'll say this at the very end as well, that there's a whole host of resources that we've put together. This infographic is in the handbook that we've put together to help you to deliver this kind of training. Okay, Gordon I'm not monitoring the conversation. Hopefully, Brian, I can see you reading there. So yeah. Yeah. Do you want to answer any questions now, Brian, or do you want to say anything at this stage, or do you want to leave those to the Q&A?
I'll try and answer them when I talk a bit about our course. I should be able to answer Christine and Gordon's questions when I talk about what we deliver. Yeah. Okay.
Well, actually, I mean that is sort of a segue to I mean this slide here. I was thinking about different models. And like, so, you know, I've given you a sense maybe of Shmoo, and Brian is here now to be able to tell you a bit more about that. There is that model of contract provision, you know, being a government contract provider, but there's also much more small scale models that you can consider, and you don't need to go, you know, a certain distance down the journey. It's just you need to go the distance that you actually want to go as an organization, yeah, and keep it at the sort of the level that you want to be at. But this was just this slide was just to kind of point out that thinking about this as a journey. Now I will be interested again in what people have done so far and where people are wanting to go, but this is an opportunity maybe to think about our 3 to 5 year plan. Like, what do we actually want to do, and how do we want to get there, and where do we start? You know, like, is it just starting by making a pitch to a local school, a local specialist school perhaps, or is it about looking at the key organizations in our area and you know, what do they actually want? Employers perhaps, you know, setting up some partnerships. So it really is about, you know, answering that question of what do we want to do, and sort of how do we want to get there. Brian, is this a good point to sort of say, you know, what Shmoo do, and
can do, yeah,
where you've come from, and sort of, you know, how you've moved through that journey?
Yeah. Shmoo's, but the 3 to 5 years, Shmoo's been on a 10-year journey. 10 years ago, we ventured into the world of employability work through a fund up here called Inspiring Scotland, who chose 24 projects across Scotland to look at alternative ways of engaging young people in the world of employability. So Shmoo wrote an employability course based around radio, made the pitch, and we were lucky enough to get 10 years investment. So for 10 years we've been able to pilot and try lots of different models and see what works and really what doesn't work as well. So we have 2 quite distinct sides of the project. We have positive transitions, which tackle 16 to 19-year-olds, and then we have early interventions, which is our school-based employability project. So I can do a whistle-stop tour on both and hopefully answer some people's questions at the same time. So our positive transition 16 to 19 course is a 12-week employability course. So for 12 weeks we take 8 to 10 young people who are on stage 2 of the employability pipeline. Now, I think the employability pipeline is more a Scottish model than an English model, but in reality there's 5 stages, one being young people who are so far removed from the world of employability. They might have some criminal justice, some social work involvement, and really aren't thinking of the word employability. Stage 2 being young people who, with the right support and the right package, will hopefully make a positive destination. Stage 3 being young people who just need to basically point it in the right direction and they'll do it. Stage 4, they're looking at modern apprenticeships, and stage 5 is they don't need anybody because they've been there, seen it, and they've made the journey themselves. So we tackle stage 2, young people who haven't got it yet, but with the right support will move on to hopefully something. So for 12 weeks we deliver an employability course, and as Cormac says, you don't have to model. We've got quite an ambitious plan where they're in here 5 days a week, not all to do with radio, however. So on our 5-day-a-week course is like this. Mondays they come in and it's the world of work. We look at everything to do with the world of work, from what to wear, what not to wear, how to shake hands, how never to shake hands, what to say, what never to say. We bring in managing directors from big oil and gas companies up here to do mock interviews. So really it's the full spectrum of employability work. Tuesday is radio, and where we might differ from other radio stations is for 12 weeks we hand the radio station over to the young people. So they're given a live radio show for the whole 12 weeks. So their second day, we've got a group of strangers who don't know each other and we fling them live on air. And it's It's great. Don't ask the young people, but it's great, and they'll tell you that it's the most scariest thing they've ever done. But we work with them for a couple of hours. Our radio department work with the young people and get them ready for their first show. And there's lots of M's and A's and buts and silences, but we're okay with that because we know that the young people are going to go on a journey. And by week 5 or 6, I pull out all the staff, and the young people are really running the radio station themselves. And again, some of the slides that we were talking about earlier, why do we do it? Well, for me, live radio is as close as we can get to the world of work. It's got a deadline, it's got a pressure. If we don't have a radio show ready, we have dead air, and then we have to answer to Ofcom. So there's lots of parameters and lots of pressure put on the young people, but it's done in a completely supported environment, and allows them to see what happens in the world of work when they're given a deadline and given a timetable and given a goal that they have to achieve. As the weeks go on, that goal becomes easier for them, and as I say, eventually they're running the radio station themselves. We also do sound. We're fortunate enough to have a recording studio, so the young people also come in and write and record a song. If they're musical, great. If they're not, it doesn't matter, because we have a very talented sound producer who works magic and creates wonderful tracks with these young people. And the tracks are all based on spoken word. They're all based on the young people's journey, where they were and where they want to be. And again, because we've got the live radio station, they can play their songs live on air, which is always a nice touch. Thursdays, we're back into the world of work, and it's really based on applying for jobs. We make sure that they know how to apply. What's the difference between sending out 100 CVs to filling in one application form that might take 2.5 hours? We never write the forms for them, but we pose lots of questions. So, do you think the employer's really going to do that? Do you think they'll like that? As part of that, we also do stuff on social media. So we put up the big screen, we get the projector out, and we look at their Facebook profiles. And we do that as a group to see what an employer is going to see. So are they going to see Dave sitting there with a big joint in his hand? Are they going to look at so-and-so's site and it's got a picture of a naked lady on the front cover? What is the first impression an employer is going to get from their social media site? And then we help them lock them down so that they become employer friendly. We also do the same with email addresses. We have had one young person whose email address was loser1 and wondered why no employer was getting back to him. So we make sure that they'll have sensible email addresses as well. So that's really a Thursday. And then Friday, we have a film department here. Again, very fortunate. So the young people are involved in making a film. And that film can be anything from the standard zombie movie that most young people want to make, right up to the last group that we had there who made a film for Police Scotland on car theft and house break-ins, and it's now getting used by every police force in Scotland. So the young people have been involved in a national-wide project. And the theory behind the course is quite simple. If they can use the confidence they gain from radio to be able to speak live on air, be able to get their planning from radio, if they can use their personal development they've done through sound, if they can work on body language and image through film, and then use the knowledge and the experience that they've gained from the employability sessions, that makes them a really employable person. And it makes them exciting. At interview, every single young person will get asked, tell me that time you work as part of a team. Which one do you want? Do you want me to talk about live radio? Do you want me to talk about the film I made? Do you want to talk about the track that I made that was played live on air? So really we're trying to level the playing field for young people in the area. All sounds very easy. I think someone's asking about the SQA. So everything is SQA accredited, so Scottish Qualifications Authority. So we used to run it with Youth Achievement Awards, which are Scotland and English based, and they were fine and they were okay, but employers didn't understand what a Youth Achievement Award was. Young people were spending more time at interview explaining the award rather than doing it. So we made a bold statement and said we would become an SQA accredited centre. So we applied to the SQA, wrote our own radio course, wrote our own film course and our employability course, and got them all accredited by SQA authority. So we now are an accredited centre and we can deliver our own SQAs. And they're at quite a high standard. And they're level 4, which is the highest you can get for employability, and radio and film are level 5, which are just under a higher. So again, in 12 weeks, a young person can go and say, actually, you know what, at school, I never got anything. In 12 weeks, with the right environment, I walked away with a level 4 and 2 level 5 SQA qualifications. So again, shows an employer that with the right environment, they can do something and they can move forward. I think Christine was asking about the accreditation course. Does it have an impact? It doesn't have an impact on anything, because we're very fortunate the way we have the course structured. The course is structured in such a way that the young people learn at their own pace without really being a school environment, and most of the young people will walk away with qualifications that they've never had, which is quite good. Our staff are all trained as high as you can get. They're all ex-radio or ex-college. They have the best of the best we try and get to make the journey more enjoyable for the young people. And yeah, we're very, very fortunate. We do a very similar thing in the schools. I won't bore you too much with it, but we also have a school-based project for second, third years, fourth year, fifth year, and 6 years, and everything that I've just talked about we do, but we do on a low-key 2 double periods a week for a year, and we take young people again who the school have identified as having no destination, and we transform their lives and give them a positive destination. We have worked with, I think it's 542 young people, moved 488-ish onto positive destinations. So yeah, we're okay at what we do, and hopefully, in a nutshell, that's us.
But I think Chrissy's question might have been more about whether the fact that accreditation, whether that in itself is more of an appeal than the radio side of things, or at least maybe that's not exactly what Chrissy was asking. But I would say that the people that come onto Shmoo's course, sorry Brian, I mean obviously you're
go for it.
The expert here, but like the young people are coming for the qualifications more than they are for to be a DJ on the radio. In fact, a lot of the young people, we met a lot of I've met a lot of the young people, and they've all said that they're not necessarily interested in radio per se.
No,
they're interested in getting a qualification at the end of it.
No, I think the 10-year journey, one of the key parts is when I first came here to start the project, it was very much seen as a radio project that had employability tagged on. And for the last 10 years, we've been on a massive journey, and we're now at a point where we are an employability project that uses media. And that's been a massive mind shift for staff and a massive mind shift for the local area and local community. I mean, we're now the #1 employer in Aberdeen, employability project in Aberdeen. We're number 16 out of 162 projects in Scotland for employability work. And it's not been an easy feat, but it's one that collectively as a group of staff and a project we've achieved, and that's just been through a different mindset, looking at radio being the tool and the employability side being the key focus, that all these tools and all these toys can help young people develop the skills that they need. Absolutely, radio is the hook a lot of the time for the kind of the actual outcomes. We need to be looking at the outcomes, and we have outcome payments on the screen there. This is all about the outcome, and the radio is a means to that end, a means to that to what people are actually going to fund or whatever. The radio is the hook often that makes it that bit more exciting than the standard employability course down the road, and that's where we're sort of saying that's the point that we're making here, is that this is what you can, this is your selling point really, is that you can present yourself as this kind of interesting organization that's actually developing some very, very fundamental and important skills. So just in Christine, I can see Christine's question there about audience. We had that to start with, but we now market ourselves with an employability project, who we can turn into a young person and say, do you want in 12 weeks' time to transform your lives? In 12 weeks' time, do you want a job? If you do, this is the course we want. We all use DJs, we all train them and film things, but ultimately the key part of our strand and our key project is about transforming lives and moving people into a positive destination using all the tools that we've got. But if they want to do media, they can come and volunteer at radio. So don't know if that answers your question, Christy, but we are certainly we're advertising ourselves in the employability project. So, and that's the ultimate aim is to move something onto a positive destination, not to make them a presenter, not to make them the next big DJ. If they want to do that, there's other strands in the project they can come along to.
But also to say an important point to make here is that each organization has a decision to make about what kind of employability training you want to do, and SHMU do it a particular way, and they do it in an excellent way, and it's all through that government kind of contract pipeline with also the schools-based stuff and all that Brian just mentioned. But Chrissy, maybe there's another shape for your training, that you might want to look at. I mean, never lose sight of the fact that it's fun. The radio. You're using some fun tools here, and the people want to be DJs. Great, like that's you're working with that passion, with that energy. But it's the evaluation and the sort of the administrative structure that you have around in the background. This is often, we're talking about learning by stealth learning, like people are learning without knowing that they're learning, but what you're doing is you're creating a structure so that people are actually they have a qualification at the end of it that you've shown to them. No, actually you did this, by making that radio show. You showed your ability to work as part of a team, or to work to a time schedule or whatever it is. So that's a really important point to make. And Heather, just while I'm looking at the chat function, absolutely. The qualifications that we're talking about, most of the ones that we have in this project been working on are UK qualifications. I'm not as actually. It's funny. I'm not as versed in Irish qualifications now as possibly I should be, but I certainly we have mapped a lot of the stuff that we've done as part of this project. Now like I said, we put different courses together, and we were looking at different ways of delivering. So we have some very short courses that were based on Arts Award. We have some longer courses that were based around AQAs and BTEC qualifications, and then of course you've got SHMU that work with the SQA qualification framework. But we've tried to map these to different qualification frameworks in such a way that you can sort of start to break down whatever qualification that you're working with. Every qualification basically is a set of learning outcomes, and you have to evidence each learning outcome. And the language sometimes that's used in one qualification is slightly different, but still quite similar to the language used in another qualification framework. So what we've tried to do is to allow you to map whatever we've done as part of Employment FM to whatever you would want to do in terms of whatever qualification that you want to deliver. So that's a kind of a basic point to make here. I'm conscious of time, and we're already kind of coming up to our 10 o'clock end point, and I know people probably need to get going. I would like to have some more questions, and it's great that people are asking questions on the chat, but I would maybe like to bring people in on audio if that's possible as well. But I did want to make some final points. Now I'm going to have to skip a few slides here. A lot of these slides we will be talking about possibly in more detail through the rest of the seminar series. This was a group that we got together in SHMU 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, Brian? Where we looked at people's courses and what actually they might look like, in 5 years' time, and how we might get there. So we'll be talking about partnerships in more detail in another seminar, and we'll also be talking about how to work with learners. In fact, I think that's the one next week, is working with young people. Or no, actually, I might be wrong about that. But the points, the general points I wanted to make here, maybe start thinking about questions that you have for us, because I'm going to open it out now. But is just back to those general points about what do you need to do as an organization to make these to move along on this journey. Well, first of all, you need to have that willingness to do this as an organization. And Brian had that phrase of ethos of change. You know, sometimes these are you're going through some organizational challenges that might need some, you know, quite significant thinking time and talking time, and you know that it does take time, as well as the development that you'll need to do to get staff and processes and so on in place. But it's also an important point to make that I know I presented this earlier on in the presentation, that this is an opportunity for you to develop a sustainable business model. But I wouldn't like to present this as being a ticket to free money. It's not just a way to make money. You're working with real people, real challenges, and you know, if you want to take this step as an organization like this, you will need to think about your role as a support organization, a youth support organization, with all of the necessary capacity that you need in terms of, you know, safeguarding and also how you link with other services, you know, maybe some mental health charities, or you know, there might be some other links that you might need to make in order to make sure that you're working with the young person in the best way that you can. And you might also, just the final point there, it's potentially trivial, but it's just how to think about your radio output. Some people have a more slick kind of sound as a station. You might sort of be presenting yourself as a commercial sort of sounding station. This might have an impact on that. You know, if you're, as Brian says, if you're allowing, you know, people on air, they're basically their first radio session, you know, that's going to be slightly challenging, you know, to the listener. And I mean, Shmoo are upfront about that and say that's fine. But it's because for them it's all about the journey. It's all about where they were at the beginning of the course and then where they are at the very end. But you know, it's just something to think about. And also the final point. Well, we've talked about that. Brian has talked about that shift that Shmoo took from being a radio station that had a bit of employability to now being an employability provider who happens to use radio and other media to develop employability, you know, core and life skills. But also just to say, and I'm sorry, I'm going to let people speak now, but there are a whole host of resources that we've developed through this project on the Employment FM website, or well, the Community Radio Toolkit website, but on the Employment FM page, and a whole range of materials, including teaching materials and also those thinking tools that we've kind of put together to help you think about the shape of this kind of course. I'm going to open this out. I'm going to turn on everybody's microphones, and hopefully this will work and not work against us. So hopefully anybody that wants to participate, you know, by talking can do so. But also, if you want to just keep it to the chat, you can do so too. And Brian, I'll let you hop in and answer some of the questions that you're reading as well.
Yeah, no worries.
So if anyone wants to actually say anything, this is your chance, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thought I heard something. No.
Okay.
That's okay. Don't worry, Marcella.
Yeah, I think I've tried to answer some of your questions, Marcella, but definitely I think what you're saying is right. But we certainly, when we apply for funding, there is no funding for radio, but there is lots of funding out there for employability work and transforming young people's lives. And it's just about how you write that up in such a way as you show that radio is a tool. That's the part that is your USP. That's the part that no one's got. I mean, no one's got a radio station. Not everybody's got one. So when you're writing up a funding bid, that's the part you need to sell. But you need to sell about where all the transferable skills are that the young people, the elderly, whichever funding you're going for, what skills can your radio station present, rather than it being your end outcome as a presenter, because no one will fund that, but they will fund someone if you say, I'm going to increase confidence by X, or I'm going to increase productivity by Y, or I'm going to develop X amount of transferable skills. That's the part employers are going to fund. Gordon said about commercial stations. Totally agree. When we've got we're a 100% community radio station, so we're very fortunate that I always describe Shmoo as Marmite. Some of the shows you'll absolutely love and you'll tune in every week, and some of the shows are probably not your taste and you'll never listen to again. But we're very fortunate that way. Do we have any? We don't. Again, we do as a radio station. We have no sponsors. We've kept it 100% community based. So we rely on no sponsors. It's purely on local funding from community groups and from grants. In regards to Shmoo Train, we have a few different models. We have the Inspire Scotland 10-year funding that we got. Aberdeen has the Fairer Aberdeen Fund, which funds community projects. We get some money from them. We also get some money from the activity agreements, which is a Scottish-based thing about young people at stage 1 who are not ready for the world of work. So we get some money from them as well. And then we have the contract, which is the biggest part of our work. But we're also now going to be looking at selling, I was about to say selling young people, that's wrong. It's selling young people's journeys. We've worked out how much it costs to put a young person through our course. And we're going to be going out to some businesses, and a part of our community team are going to be going out and selling the course, saying, do you want to transform a young person's life in 12 weeks? If so, it costs X. How many young people's places do you want to buy? And for most projects and most big businesses who have got a community clause in their contract, they've got the money sitting there. So again, we're trying to help them by saying we can do X, Y, and Z. If you help us with some placements, we can get you some young people. It will cost X. And again, it's about looking at the business model and trying to work out where your radio station and your employability model works, and looking at the local community and seeing who can impact on that.
And just to point out that Shmoo have a whole host of links with employers, which allows them to put people on work placements, but also create some funding opportunities along the way. We're just at 10 o'clock now. I'm happy to stay on for a little bit longer. I don't know if you are, Brian. It's absolutely fine for anyone to leave. I know that we've only scheduled from 9 to 10. So obviously, if anyone has meetings to go to and so on, you're free to go. But there may be some more questions, and I can see already some questions coming through. So yeah, I'm happy for this to continue just for a bit longer at least.
Yeah. Russell's asking sides of groups. Shmoo Train, the 16 to 19 stuff is 8 to 10 young people, and within the schools we work with a class up to 15. And really, it's just about equipment. We can equip a classroom for about 15 people, so that's our maximum size.
Thanks, Chrissy. See you next week. Great. So just to say, anybody who's leaving, this is a 5 webinar series, and hopefully we will be able to pick up on some of the specific questions you might have around any aspect of this work throughout the series. But keep the questions coming for now, at least. This isn't to cut anything off for now. Gordon, did you want to say something? I see your microphone is turned on.
No, it just took me a long time to work out how to do it. But I'm very impressed with the fact that Brian's telling it from a Scottish perspective. We tend to get a UK view most of the time.
Yep, flying the saltire, we're all good. Oh.
Was there a question there? Sorry, I think I missed a bit of that. No.
No, there wasn't really a question.
Okay, sorry.
We run entirely with volunteers. Some are ex-community education, some ex-teachers. Don't know, having been retired for 10 years, I want to go back and deal with the SQA and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, do you want to set up SQA? Do you want to deliver qualifications, Gordon? Is that kind of where you're heading, or?
We have had some discussions with a music project called Heavy Sound in East Lothian. They were interested in adding a radio dimension to their training. So we are based in a community centre, so very close links with a section now called Lifelong Learning and Employability. And
Oh yeah, yes.
some of our former colleagues are still around, so we've got good contact there. It's just trying to find out what we could do within the resources we have. Basically, we don't have staff, and although we've just got a grant for a business development worker, that's as far as it's likely to go.
Okay. We certainly could be happy to have a chat about it. And the employability side, in reality, you don't know. You can use the lifelong learning team. They should have SQA. They should have an SQA qualification themselves if it's community learning or community education, and you could get them to apply for the course on your behalf.
Yeah, I think that would be the best bet. As I say, there's former colleagues that have still not been able to say made redundant or cut as yet. So some people are still around. Positive destinations is a big thing now for lifelong learning.
Yeah, no, definitely, but certainly, yeah. I mean, we just took the choice to take everything in house so we could just look after it ourselves. But certainly use the partners that are out there, and if community learning have got a SQA license, it's be quite straightforward to help you bid to get the employability award or the radio award, because we've done all the legwork for it. So it's not a, now that we've done it, it's not it looks complicated, but it's not as complicated as it should be, and we could certainly help you with that.
Right, no, that's okay. I'll maybe make contact direct later on.
Yeah, not a problem.
And just to say generally, like to everybody else as well, we are coming to the end of this Employment FM project, but really this is exactly why the project exists, is to help you to get thinking about what you might do in this sphere, and any information that we can pass on, we would be very, very happy to do so. The resources on the website there hopefully will get you started thinking, but there's also the direct support, like just contacting us and talking to us about or asking us questions, and just wanting to know a bit more. Hopefully we'll be covering a lot of these points through the seminar series, but there's also very much the possibility, we're just opening ourselves out to just talking about this individually, and to look at the station, look at your station and think about what works for you, and just talk through some different models and different experiences and so on. That's very much what we're doing here.
Yep.
I don't know. There's not many more questions coming through on the chat, and I kind of get the impression that unless there's any other burning questions, I think maybe it might be the time just to close it here. But before I do so, and before I kind of, end the room and all that, close the room and all that, it just, just to say, yes, that this is an ongoing conversation, and it's an ongoing webinar series as well. And I'm very happy to have so many people who are interested and engaged in this subject, and hopefully we'll be enriching this conversation as we go through the webinar series. So very, very happy to have you all here, and I think there's some more people who will be joining us next week that couldn't just make it this week. So this conversation will certainly be going on for the next month at least. I'll let people do the final typing there just before we end. But I might just might end the recording so that we at least keep that. Yeah.